Hi, how are you? This is Nancy Kogar, and of course, this is Boomer Time. I'm so glad you've joined us once again. I'm so happy to be here. I want to talk a little bit more about why in the world would a busy and successful estate planning attorney and elder law attorney with a busy practice, why would she be doing this? Do you know why? Well, I'm going to tell you in a minute, but first of all, I want to ask you some questions. First, have you ever thought about taxes? Ever thought about not wanting to necessarily pay as much as you might have to? I'm sure you've thought that. Well, I'm sure most people have thought that. You don't want to pay what you don't have to pay. What about saving on taxes or taxes that might be associated with an inheritance to a loved one, to a grandchild, to a family member? I'm sure you don't want to tack that stuff on, right? Is there anything you can do about it? Well, it's a good question. I'll tell you one thing, it requires planning. It requires talking to someone who has experience in these issues. Another question that I hear quite often, heard it today, was how can I avoid losing my house with my husband going into a nursing home? That's a very important question. You don't want to lose your house, right? You've been working all your life for it, especially if it's free and clear of the mortgage. That's quite an accomplishment. And most people that make that accomplishment say, wow, I can really rest assured that I have a place to live, a secure place to call home, right? We don't want to lose your home. There are things you can do. Requires planning. You're going to see a consistent theme from me, right? But that's a question that comes up often. And in this episode, I wanted to talk about, I do this from time to time. I wanted to talk about questions that I hear often, FAQs, frequently asked questions. I think some of these questions, maybe all of them, relate to concerns or things that may be rolling around in your head that you may be concerned about. So hope this will be helpful. And while I'm at it, if you've got a question and you keeps you up at night, keeps you worried about the future, you don't know what to do, reach out. Okay? That is the whole reason this busy estate planning elder law attorney with this busy practice has Boomer Time. This, I mean, me, of course, but it's the whole reason. It's the whole reason. My motivation is to give you some general information about these complex issues, these really critical questions, and it's not easy to find answers to these things, and to encourage you in what might be a very isolated experience of being a caregiver for an older adult, or even being an older adult looking for help. Maybe your spouse has passed away. These are not uncommon, okay? And that's part of the reason I created Boomer Time. I've seen too many people coming to me on the back end where they've had lousy estate planning done, shoddy estate planning, or they did it themselves on the internet, or they don't have any at all. None of it works. All of it creates problems. And I don't want you to have those problems. So that's the reason for Boomer Time, right? And I want to sprinkle in some encouragement too, right? We all need encouragement. I think the world could use a lot more encouragement. So, anyway, we're going to talk about these 10 questions that not even older adults, but 10 questions that often come up and you really should ask about both long-term planning and estate planning. And of course, I love resources, so we're going to have practical tips for each of these. And there'll be a little downloadable resource for you on my website, nancykogar.com. nancykogar.com. And that is the same place you can go and send me a question. Hey, they make a good episode. I want to know what's concerning you. I want to make this relevant. So I think it is already relevant, but I really want to know you know, something maybe more pressing to you than another. And hey, we're working on episode, what is this? Episode 77 or 78? There's a lot of information out there now. So it's available. It's free. And it gives you the opportunity to join into the Boomer Time community, which is exactly where I think you belong. Okay. Well, in this episode, like I said, we're tackling 10 of the most frequently asked questions I hear all the time from both older adults and their family members about the aging process, long term planning, saving assets, protecting assets, and estate planning. I want to share some practical, approachable tips that I think can help you maybe redirect you to think not about worry, but about how can I address these things? You have the power to plan. So if you can stop worrying about some of these things, then you can do something proactive to avoid it altogether or make it less difficult and challenging. So I want you to be able to navigate these questions, navigate the aging process with confidence. Protect your assets if you can. Choose which assets, you need to have accessible to you. Maybe there's some others that you can put into your estate plan to protect them. Reduce family stress down the road. All very important things that relate to, bottom line, quality of life. So stick with me. I'll be right back. Welcome back to Boomer Time. I'm going to get some t-shirts soon. So if you want a t-shirt, you're going to have to keep watching. I'm having those in production and they are going to be super cool. Looking forward to that. That's going to be fun. A lot of other things coming up and make the podcast even better. So if you have not done it already, please subscribe. Please share with a friend. Those subscription rates are so important to getting the word out. So I am thanking you in advance if you will go ahead and do that. Subscribe, like, share. Comment on something. I want to know what you think about things. Always keep it positive, right? Or at least proactive. So I thank you in advance for that. So we are talking key questions and practical tips, the frequently asked questions that often come up when it comes to aging, estate planning, long-term care planning. Well, here's a biggie. What will happen if I need long-term care, and how am I going to pay for it? Well, I will tell you, and I'm sure it's probably no surprise. Nursing home care, assisted living care, independent care, having someone come into your home, depending on how often you do that, it is all very expensive. And it just keeps getting more expensive. There's one nursing home nearby here that charges upwards of $12,000 a month. $12,000 a month. And that's really not outrageous compared to what other people are charging. I hear everything from $8,000 to $10,000 to $12,000. That's a lot of money. And not everybody has that kind of money. If you do, you could wipe through your entire life savings pretty quick. So what do? Can you get help with that? How do you protect your assets? Well, so not a lot of people have this, but if you have the opportunity to get it, I would encourage you to look into something called long-term care insurance. Okay, while you're still insurable. Of course, it's expensive because of what it does. And if you're 60 versus 30, of course, the premium's going to be more expensive, right? But I think it's worth looking into. And I've talked to a couple of my financial advisor friends, networks, and a couple banks. And this is a product that they still sell. So ask around. I think it's worth it if you can incorporate this into your estate plan. If you have it, don't lose it. It is worth it. Most people don't have it. It can make a big difference when it comes to long-term care. All right. Well, the next option is public assistance, and that is namely Medicaid, which is TennCare here. It is income based, asset based, I should say, because you have to be eligible to receive it. Now, there is some planning you can do. There are some legal options to get it uh, to be something that's available to you. Really, planning is the biggest piece of it because, of course, there's the 5-year look back. Well, you've probably heard of that. And the other piece is there's recovery. So, going back to the question, how do I pay for this? Well, you're going to either pay for it, I think, on the front end or the back end, or if you're just destitute, that's a different issue. But for people that have things and they want to get the most out of them, let me say, and get some help if they can, you got to look at Medicaid eligibility. Transfers are a big deal. Talked about that before. Don't quit claim your house away to your kids for nothing. It's going to cause a big problem. Okay. Here's another thing. You might consider setting up some kind of trust, estate planning. There are irrevocable trusts. Sometimes they're called Medicaid Asset Protection Trusts. Those really require you to put your assets in that trust, and you yourself don't have access to them anymore. That's a real drawback for a lot of people, I find. But that is the most extreme, I'd say, trust that's available to protect assets. And of course, it is subject to the 5-year look back. Same thing. And there are other trusts that can help. Here in Tennessee, there is limited recovery. If you're in another state, you want to make sure that you know what their recovery is. There's something else called expanded recovery, which means they have all kinds of options when it comes to recovering against benefits that you may have received after you pass away. But in Tennessee, there's limited recovery, and that essentially means they can only recover in probate. So, a lot of times, if you can stay out of probate, that takes care of that too. How can I make sure I don't lose my house if I need nursing home care? Wow, this is a biggie. Okay. Again, you could do Medicaid Asset Protection Trust. You're transferring all your assets within 5 years, hopefully, into Medicaid Asset Protection Trust. That's the irrevocable. It means you can't cancel it. You can't revoke it. And allowing someone else, third party, to manage your assets moving forward. That may not really be practical for most people. You just want to live in your house, right? And make sure that you don't lose it. Well, there are things you need to sit down with someone like me and talk through the options. What is considered something that's acceptable to you and what's too extreme? There's practical considerations of what do you need to live to maintain your own quality of life. And I must say, also, staying out of a nursing home. That's a big thing for me. If you plan ahead of time, you can reduce or completely eliminate the need to have to do that. And I think that's a far superior option for everyone because they are expensive. And to me, they may offer good care, but it's still a last resort. Wouldn't you rather be at home? You might consider selling, downsizing, or sometimes there are things you can do to reserve a deed, in a deed, the right for you to live there, and then you create a remainder interest to whoever your heirs or your beneficiary is going to be. That may have some transfer issues with it too, but sometimes it works. How can you ensure that someone you trust can make decisions if you become incapacitated? Well, I always tell people, make sure you choose the right people to be your fiduciaries. Because believe it or not, most people who steal from older adults are family members. Yikes, right? You want to pick someone you know is good with money, is honest, has your best interest in mind, and has not filed bankruptcy multiple times because that's an indication that they're not so good with money, right? But give some considerable thought to who you want appointed in these positions and appoint an alternate. Always have an alternate. I want to talk about healthcare power of attorney, same kind of scenario, but some special considerations there too. So stick with me. I brought this up at the beginning of the show, but taxes, right? Life can't get rid of taxes, can't get rid of how you leave life, right? Well, unless you consider something supernatural, right? But in the meantime, there are just some things we have to do, right? And one of those is pay taxes. So you can minimize some of the taxes you owe. And as I said, that's a question that people ask often. How can I minimize my own taxes? And then when it comes to transferring my assets, how can I minimize the tax impact on my heirs? I would want to mention that, of course, lots of states have inheritance tax, just plain old inheritance tax. That means anything someone inherits gets taxed at whatever rate the state sets. But here in Tennessee, we don't have an inheritance tax. You wonder why it's getting so busy here? Well, it's because a lot of people from tax-weary states are moving here because we do not have an inheritance tax. We have low property taxes. We have good quality of life. So why wouldn't you want to be here, right? But get back to my question. So the best way to avoid minimizing taxes for your heirs. Well, there's some strategies you might consider. You might talk about gifting. There's an amount that you can gift every year that the IRS, Internal Revenue Service, sets. I think it's close to $20,000 now. Doesn't help you when it comes to the transfer issues you may face later in life, but it does help you with gift tax and tax exclusions. So if you've got the money to do it and you got the other things taken care of, that may be a strategy for you to reduce the value of your estate overall by giving it away ahead of time. You might want to consider, different kinds of IRAs. They can reduce taxes. And those are, some of them at least, are able to be inherited by multiple heirs and transferred over without liquidating them now. So that's always an option. And there are some options you can take on with more specialized trusts. Charitable remainder trusts, special needs trusts can help with that. There's all kinds of, there's a thing called a TIST, a Tennessee Investment Service Tax Trust. It's complicated, folks, but there are all kinds of things you can do. But guess what? You have to plan. You have to talk to someone that has this information, does this kind of work, right? How can I protect a child or grandchild who has a disability or special needs? Well, this is something that gets overlooked so many times, so many. And every time I bring it up, someone says, I never thought of that. Well, there's another benefit to having someone that does this for a living, right? If you have someone, whether it's an adult, a child, if you have someone that's on a government program, maybe they're on disability, maybe they have a special need, they're in a group home and receiving assistance for that, or on disability, SSI, some kind of VA disability, an inheritance outright can throw them off that program. That can be devastating for someone. And you know what? If you don't put a plan in place to maybe even prevent them from receiving something, to prevent that from happening, under the default law, This is just going to happen, whether you want it or not. So you have to plan. You have to plan. Um, and you should coordinate those things with family members because you're going to have someone manage those things. And you want to make sure that they really agree and understand what is involved with managing that. Nothing worse on the back end to have people that were appointed as fiduciaries and the person dies and then the person says, I didn't know they wanted to appoint me. I can't do that. Yeah, it happens. Here's something I talked about just last week, I think, in the last episode. What will happen to my pets if I'm unable to care for them or I pass away? Well, now you know, right? But just to remind you, you have to do a pet trust as part of your estate planning. You cannot leave your miniature poodle $10,000. You can't do that. You could leave it to a person to take care of the poodle for $10,000, but if you give that person the cash, there is no guarantee that little Priscilla, or whatever the pet's name is going to get that money. So, even these things are complicated these days, but you can really set out some good, well-funded, structured care if you plan. I talked about this before, but how do you pick the right person as your power of attorney or executor? Well, some of this is common sense, I think, but sometimes common sense is not so common. You want to choose someone who is trustworthy and organized and financially put together, and willing to do it, right? Those are all important factors. I hate to say it, but again, when we have people running off with money, somebody suddenly forgets about their brothers and sisters. If there's a house that's part of an estate, they try to sell it. Oh, I forgot about them. We see this kind of stuff all the time. So, things have become more stringent in that if you're in probate, at least in Hamilton County, they're going to make you put the money from a sale of real estate into the registry of the court, specifically for this purpose. The chancellor has just said, I've had it with that, and it's my court, and I'm going to put the money in the registry, and then you can maybe have an additional step and ask for it once everybody has been paid, claims have been paid, so forth. It's just reality. But, pick someone you trust. If you don't trust someone, it doesn't have to be someone you're related to. And have a backup, because people pass away all the time. They move. Something happens. They're not able to serve. Just, that's the way it goes, right? Okay. Well, I didn't make it through all my questions, but there's always questions to be asked. And like I said, I want to hear your questions. Maybe you don't agree with me about something I just shared, right? Tell me why. I'd love to hear from you. More so, though, if you've got questions or something that's really, troubling you about something you're going through, reach out. Chances are, if you're worried about it, there's someone else that's going through the same thing that is worried about it too. And most often, you don't really think about any of these things until you find yourself in the situation. I know that even personally. I cared for my father. I did the long distance caregiving journey, and I can talk more about that and the challenges I faced on another episode. He's passed away since, and now I'm caring for my mother. So I know how difficult it is. I know how challenging it can be. I know it's expensive. I know you get tired. I know. So reach out. And better yet, keep listening to Boomer Time, and please subscribe Go to my website, lots of resources there. Like I said, I'm going to have some resources even with related to some of the questions we've discussed today. nancykogar.com. Always free, always available. And if you want a strategy session, you can reach out there and schedule something with me. My wonderful assistant, Dee Dee, will take good care of you and get you in just as soon as we can to talk about your concerns, your plan, your options. So, I want you to have a good week, and I will see you soon.